Yeah, good morning, guys, and welcome once again to today's class. And in today's class, as we all can see on my screen, we will be speaking. I would be teaching on CSS layouts, which include positioning, Flexbox, and CSS grid. So before let me just give a brief background into what CSS layout means. Before now, we can see that when we are building our website, you can only align items one after the other. So at some point, it became difficult. Before now, you were using something called float. So if you want to move an element, if you want to change the orientation of an element from the left, from the normal vertical way it is to an horizontal way, you have to use something called float. I don't know if no, I don't think you would see code bases nowadays that are using float. But if you were fortunate enough to start your tech journey around 2019, 2020, it was still so much in use then. You have something called float. If you want to move an element from the vertical line to an horizontal line to the left or to the right, you have to do something called float left, float right. So that's how you change an orientation. But with the advent of positioning such as Flexbox and CSS grid, we now have the opportunity to be able to move our element from a vertical layout to an horizontal layout. So this is called a one layout system and a multi-dimension and a multi-layout system. So a Flexbox on its own, it's a one-dimensional layout system, while CSS grid is a two or multi-dimensional layout system. So in this topic, we'll be looking at both CSS Flexbox and CSS grid. And in today's class, we would be talking about Flexbox. So let's continue. So I have here, what is positioning in CSS? Positioning is a set of property we use to control how an element is positioned on the web page by adjusting its position. So what that simply means is that you might want to change how your element is looking, probably your picture. You want to change how it once your users scroll on your web page, you want to flip the direction. Okay, once it's in a vertical position, you want to change the position to horizontal. You want to move it from the beginning to the far end. You want to just change the position all in all. So that is what the position does. It just changes how your users interact with your elements from one position to another, and you will see that a lot. There are sometimes we do something and we actually use positioning to move two elements from the both elements could be in the same div, and we want to change how they would be. We want to move one to the left, and we don't want to use Flexbox. We probably want to place one over each other. So that's when we use CSS positioning. And yes, by doing that, you are actually changing the interaction, and you're actually changing how it automatically looks from the onset, from the natural position of how your elements are being styled. So what are the various types of positioning we have in CSS? One is static, which is how the normal default way it looks like on your web page. That's how it's going to be static. We have relative. Which is like position relative to the normal positioning. We have absolute relative. It's also quite similar to the relative, but we use both of them side by side. So when you want to change the default position of an element, you have to wrap the parent container in an absolute in relative. You have to give it a class name of relative. Then you would move. Then you make the body element, the particular element you want to style, you make it absolute. So also we have something called fixed. Fixed relative position is relative to the browser. So once you have an element as fixed, even if you are scrolling on your browser, the position of that particular element actually remains the same. So also we have something called sticky. So for sticky, it acts relative to every viewpoint. So once you are scrolling on your website, so that we use fixed and sticky majorly for navigation bar. So sometimes you would want your navigation bar to be sticky, so it doesn't, once you are scrolling up, your browser does not push it above into hiding. So you want it to be either fixed or sticky. Once it's fixed, that means your your navigation bar is actually sticky. It's actually fixed to that position where it is. So every other thing that is going to be scrolling up are going to go behind it. And if it's for sticky, it's just more like it's just stick on every position you are on your screen. It's actually sticking to that particular part of it. It's not fixed. It's actually kind of flexible, but you don't know if it's flexible or is fixed. So please, do you understand? Am I communicating? Please, I want to be sure I'm communicating. This when you are working with positioning, it looks kind of tricky in some settings, but you will definitely get it. When we start using it in various examples, you would definitely get it. So, Abraham, go ahead. Abraham, your hand is raised, so kindly go ahead, Abraham.
Okay. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Just like you said about the position fix, you mentioned the number, just like the number. You know, there are sometimes I want to make use of position fix. It's when I set it to position fix, the navbar will just change the width. We just change it to not be full. So I mostly use sticky. So, but when I try to use nav fix, it does not really work well. So I don't know. Don't know if you any experienced something like that.
Well, I think I've experienced that, but it's been, I can't really remember the solution I used because I think that fixed actually just shrinks your element a bit.
Oh,
Instead of
okay.
making it occupy the full width, it's actually going to
Yes,
shrink
sir.
it to a particular
Yes, sir.
position. Yes, I have actually experienced that before, but I think most times, I've not really done something it's been a while I've done something like that actually, but I can actually check that. I know I've experienced that, but and at that point
Oh,
when I used fixed, I just switched it to sticky almost immediately. So and that
yeah.
was fine for me. So that
Okay.
was,
I use the width. I turn the width to 100%. So, but
yeah,
there will be an issue now with the, for instance, if a screen size is above 144, maybe I set the maximum width. If I try to increase the maybe in a larger screen size, it will just be
yeah,
above. It will just be increasing. So maybe most of the
yeah,
time I just use sticky. I was just thinking of
yeah. So
okay.
I think that's actually the quick fix I actually used for myself also. So I think that's actually the quick fix I actually use for myself also. So it's just one of it. So yeah, most times we just, like I said, I look for the most optimal way. I don't always for me, I'm just going to say that one personal experience. Once I see something is actually giving me issues and I don't want to stay too long on it, I just try another method. I just want you to know that there is not one way to doing things when you're building your website. There are multiple ways of achieving one particular thing. So you just try to explore so many options. So sometimes once I see that, okay, I've tried this thing twice and it's giving me issues repeatedly, what I simply just do is I just switch on to the next one. And if the next one does the job for me, perfect. I move on from there. So, but sometimes it's actually good that you understand some of these things because you never can tell where you're going to meet them. Yeah, that's happened to me on some occasions that I was thinking of doing something and I used it in another way. And when we had a review session in the office, I also wanted to get accustomed to this. If you become a developer and you're working on a thing, there's something called code review session. So it was when we were doing a code review session that my teammates were telling, okay, you can do it in this part. You were doing that part. I can't remember the particular thing, but I could do it in this particular way, and it's also going to be more optimized than it used to be. So yes, that's it. So please just give me 1 minute. I want to quickly sort out something. Just a minute, please. Yeah, so guys, I'm back. I just have to sort out something at my door. So let's continue. So I think, okay, I just have summary on position because my lecture today, I'm going to be majorly focusing on yeah, I'm so sorry, guys. I'm just trying to sort out something on my end. Sorry, just please. So this is a summary on positioning. So we have the sticky default position of float and normal. So, and we also have relative, which I just explained. Relative positioning, relative is in its normal position, adjusting the position from right, top, right, bottom, and left. Absolute related position relatively to the nearest position as ancestor or initial container block. So this actually kind of looks theoretical, but we are definitely going to use it in practical. Sorry, please, can you all hear me? I didn't know my mic was muted. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So for things like this, so we would look more into it on Flexbox. So by next class, I look to just focus more on Flexbox because Flexbox looks more easy to understand and it's straightforward than diving into positioning because positioning needs a lot of technicality. So once you understand Flexbox, then we can now move into positioning, which is what I plan on doing. Then we move into CSS grid. So our major topic for today, I just wanted to bring you up to speed about positioning so you know which is which. So for Flexbox for short, which the long-term meaning is flexible box layout. Is a CSS layout model that allows you to design complex layouts using a simple and flexible responsive approach. It makes it easier to distribute space, alignment of content, and managing the position of elements within a container You are using this to align your item. Like I made mention of it in my introduction. I said that you use Flexbox to change the orientation of your item and positioning it to the, yeah. So you are using it to position it to the left, to the right, and to the center, anyhow you want to do it. So you would see that in practical. When we get into the practical session, like I always do in every class, after we have explained, I come up with practicals on how to go about it. So let's go into it. So what's the main? So we have the main, we have the main properties of Flexbox. So what defines an element to make it Flexbox? Once you are saying an element is a Flexbox, the default position of your browser, of your elements on your browser, are in a column, in a vertical position. That means every element you are writing on your browser, they are going to be on a vertical line. So with Flexbox, we change the orientation to what's the name? We change the orientation from vertical to horizontal. So as you can see, what we have here, you just have to set the parent container to a div, to a display of flex. And once you set the parent container to a display of flex, it automatically change the direction from a column to a row, which makes all the elements side by side. Instead of stacking one after the other, it makes them side by side. Please, are you understanding? If you are not getting my explanation, I think probably when I get into the practical section, you can get it also, but let me explain so you see it in practical. So justify content. So when you want to align an item in Flexbox, you use justify content. So you want there to be space in between, space around, instead of using margin, padding, thereabouts. You can actually use justify item on the horizontal axis to make space. Just like, okay, now you want to have an element, there should be space in between them. There are different ways you can justify an element in Flexbox. You have justify content center, that means you are moving into the center, justify content space between, so that between each of those elements, you would have a space. A space is going to be between both of them. You have space around, that means if between each of those elements, there's going to be a space to the right and a space to the left of each of those elements. So aligning item, so you want to align an item, once they are horizontally set, you want them to be on equals, you don't want them to be above, like more like, okay, one should be above each other. You want all of them to be on a straight line. So that's when you use an align item. And you also have flex direction. So what does flex direction do? Flex direction simply means that, okay, now, once you are using Flexbox and you know that the positioning is actually horizontal, the position is actually vertical rather, then you want to change it to an horizontal way. Then once you have changed it to an horizontal way, you can actually change it back to a vertical way using Flexbox. That's when we can use flex direction, either row or column. But by default, when you say flex, display flex, what it automatically does is take your element from a vertical position to an horizontal position straight away. So let's continue. So why use Flexbox? What are the major benefits of using Flexbox? It's for simple layout. Flexbox is great for creating responsive and flexible layout system without needing for complicated calculations. So if you are using positioning, or you are using float, you would have to start doing some calculation here and there. Okay, you have to start doing some serious kind of alignment, trying to say, okay, is this element aligned properly? You have to do some check if the space on the right is equal to the space on the left. And those calculations sometimes takes a lot of time. I can remember when I was using float back then, it goes a long way than just using float left, float right. If the elements are not, if the elements are not aligned properly, you have to start doing some margin to the top, margin to the left, so that you can be able to see that, okay, all these elements are on a straight line. So alignment control. Flexbox allows you to align elements horizontal and vertically without having to do margin, padding, to allow them to be. But one thing I want you to also note, it does not invalidate, it does not replace margin and padding. That is one thing I want you to know. Flexbox does not replace margin and padding. They still have their own unique function of which they are doing. So space distribution, it allows for dynamic distribution of space between elements, even when the numbers of the elements are changed in size. Also now, for example, now when you are working with an endpoint and you have multiple elements, once you're working with dynamic data and data are supplied from the backend, and you don't have an idea of how large the data will eventually grow. If you are using position of float, if the data begins to grow larger, it will begin to distort the view of what you have on your browser. But with Flexbox, you have an element of flex wrap that once you get to the end of the screen and there are more data that can't fit in, it automatically breaks to the next line, having it that you don't have to keep on checking. Probably if your data, probably when you were building from the beginning, you have a data of 100, I have a data of 20, let me use 20 for example, and you have fixed your padding, you have used your float and you have positioned it with with the float layout. And by the time the data is going into 100, your view are becoming so distorted, and you have to now keep going back to the code base and try to fix it to match that design layout. So, but with Flexbox, it's automatic. Once you use your Flexbox for 20 items in your grid elements, it automatically works. Or even if you want to do what? You want to simply, even if the data grows from 20 to 1000 and the likes, you still have the same layout system for it. So in summary, before we go into the practical session, in summary, Flexbox is a powerful one-dimensional layout system that makes it easy to arrange elements in rows and columns. It is great for creating responsive and adaptive layouts, especially for smaller structure. With Flexbox, you can control alignment, distribution, and sizing of items within a container, making it easier to build modern websites, web designs. So also, Flexbox just goes beyond you just building for a large screen. It also works with responsiveness. Is a major tool for responsiveness, if I must tell you, because you want some of the things you just need to do when you're working with responsiveness is to change the orientation from an horizontal position to a vertical position, to make it, instead of if it has on an horizontal line, if there are 4 elements on an horizontal line, on a smaller screen you might want to reduce it to 2 or 1. So it actually works in various ways, and you will see by the time we get into responsiveness, some of the things you just have to change when you're working with responsiveness is just the layout structure of your device, because a laptop screen is actually larger than a laptop screen. A laptop screen is actually larger than a smaller tablet screen, and even to a phone. So we would see that when we get into responsiveness. Sorry, am I making sense? Are you guys understanding? Am I communicating before we go into the practical session? Do we have any question? Was there any part you guys missed that I should go over again? Was there any part you guys missed that I should go over again? Sorry, I need response. If there is any part you guys want me to go over again, I would do justice to that. I can only 3 people are only saying yes. So what about others? So let's go into the practical session. So the first thing we would do is this. So let me just stop sharing my screen on this. So let me Yep. Sorry, just a second. Let me try sharing my screen. Let me open up. Let me show you a different way in which we always use in opening up our browser. We use in opening our files. We use something called the the command prompt, which you can also, if you're using a Mac, you can actually use called your terminal. So I have on my command prompt. I know some people might be familiar with this, those that have experience working with. So I'm just going to use this to navigate to my project folder properly. So I have CD document. So I am just navigating into my project folder right here, GitHub, CD CodeCamp, CD product, so code dot. So I'm opening up my VS Code. Simply what I just did is I just navigated into this particular project folder. Joshua, what's the issue? Joshua, what is the issue? What if you don't remember all the roads? Like I said, sometimes you don't need to cram all these things. It just comes with ease, basically. It comes with ease when you have once you have done it once, twice, three times. And it does not also invalidating you opening you right-clicking on your project folder and opening with VS Code. It does not invalidate that, but I am quite more experienced, and this is what I use most of the time not because of just HTML and CSS. I write other programming languages, which I have to run some codes in my terminal. That's why I actually make use of that most of the time. So you will get used to it. Don't worry. I think going forward, I'll also do this a couple of times so that you can get used to it also. So I have so at the end of this class, like I did in the previous class when we had a practical session on HTML and CSS, I came up with a design that we are going to work with. So this is our design. This is simply what we are going to, at the end of this class, this is simply what we want to be building. This is what we are simply going to build. But before we go into building this, I want us to get accustomed to Flexbox. So this is our end product of what we are going to work with in this class. And we would see, I'm not going to go into the mobile responsiveness. I'm not going to go into the mobile responsiveness because that's a different topic on its own. So we would apparently judge that was well, that's actually good, trying out things outside of the class. And can you now see, you don't even need to ask me any question. I would design it in class and your answer, you'll get your answer. You'll get your answer to it in the class. So everybody is going to learn from it. All right, so before I go into this, let me create it the normal way. Let me copy out all these elements. Let me copy this out and create a text file. Text.txt. So I just paste this right here and I save it. So it's going to be our virtual text. And yeah, and let me go live so you can see what we have. So we don't have anything here. And in most cases, in most case, I want to show you how you can move an element from. I just want to show you practical sessions on how to work with Flexbox. So previously also I'll create a folder called styles, and I would create a file called style.css. styles.css. And normal thing we do, I'll just create a global reset. So I have margin 0, padding 0, box sizing, border box. So I think this is done. So let me just come here and fix our link rel style sheet, and we have our href. We have /styles/style.css. So Bola, this could actually be where your issue is coming from. This could actually be where your issue is actually coming from. This linking part of it. This could be where your issue is coming from, Bola. So Bola, I want you to take note of this so you can try this out after the class. So just check, okay, do you have a folder which has your styles inside? So if you have it, just try to map it properly. Just do a /. It takes you one step outside the project, your index.html, into your styles folder, then you patch it through your style file itself. So let's continue. So let me just have some few elements right here. I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let me just have this. We're going to have div. I'm going to give it a class name of container. Class of container. I also want you to know that your class name can be anything. So I'm just going to have div. Just going to have a div of 1, div of 1, 2, 3, 4. So this container alone gives me access to just do what I want to do. So I'm going to have an h1 here. Let me just give it a title of Flexbox class. So let's now go to let's go live and see what we have. Yeah, so that's what we got. So let's go to our, so most of the things we'll be working with is in our style.css. So the first thing we will do is, I'm just going to give it a background color. So I'm going to give our body a background color of blue. So that's what I just did. So let's check it out. We have a background color of blue. I'm going to make our text white. Text color. No, not text color, sorry. That's Tailwind CSS, color of white. So yeah, we're going to do Tailwind along the line. So we have white. So let's now style our, let me style the h1. Let me do text align center. Let's save that and see. Yeah, it moves to the center. So now let's now style this element. Let's style our container. .container. We have display of flex. We have display of flex. So first thing you would notice is that each of those elements moves from a vertical line. So let me comment this out. Ctrl/ and save. You would see that they were all spaced one after the other. 1, 2, 3, 4. And by the time I added a display flex, they moved from vertical orientation to an horizontal orientation. Sorry, are you getting what I am explaining? Am I making sense, guys? Am I making sense, guys? All right, so let's run. I have, so let's continue. We have a display flex. I'll just do something called justify content. Like I said, I want to give everything a space in between. I want to allow there should be a space in between all of them. So I have justify content, space between. So once I do this justify content space between, you can see it gives everything a space in between all the elements. So let me give this a margin to the bottom. So margin bottom of 10 pixel. So we have enough space. To see what we are doing. Did I save? Okay. That's container margin bottom. No. Let me make it something larger. Let me make it 10 rem. That's good. So yeah, let me also make it margin top. Let me also give it a margin top of 10 rem also. So it's more aligned, margin top. And yes, that should give us enough space. Can I use this is just for practical I am this, so I would, when we go into the actual class, you would see what I want to do. So I have just defined the body element to be. So this is basically what Flexbox does. And let me just do an align item center. So each of these elements are properly aligned to the center. Each of these elements are properly aligned to the center. So let's check it out. As you can see, they are aligned properly to the center. And yes, we are good to go. So let me also try something of space around. So I have tried space between, space around. So with space around, it would give each of those elements space around. So there's going to be space on the left and on the right, space on the left and on the right. So let's also try justify content center, and let's see what that is going to do for us. Justify content center. That will bring all our elements. As you can see, it brought all our elements directly to the center. That's simply what it did. And you can see that they are all modeled together, and I can actually give it a space. I can actually give it a gap of to give gap in Flexbox. What you simply have to do is just define a gap. So I give it a gap of 5 rem. That's going to give it a space, equal space in between those elements. So instead of you giving it a margin and a padding, just give it a gap, and it gives it equal space. It space out audio element. So let me show you. So you can see that all my elements are well spaced out. They have equal space. The tool I'm simply using is called pesticide to be sure if your elements are properly aligned on Toggle Pesticide on your browser. So as a front-end developer, you have to check. You have to be able to check, okay, are these elements properly aligned on my screen? So it does not be like, oh, they are aligned on this part of the screen and on another screen they are smaller. So those are some of the tools I mentioned in the first class that along the line I would explain to you what they do. So I have this tool that I try to use to check, okay, are my elements properly aligned? Yes or no? So that's what I have. So I'm just going to close this up and just refresh my page, and the line goes away. Toggle, it's called Toggle Pesticide. Toggle Pesticide. I want to be sure. Yeah, pesticide. So his name is Toggle Pesticide. Thank you very much, George, Glory, care for that, and Helen. So you just go to your Chrome extension and you download that. So let's continue. So I think this is just the basic thing about Flexbox, and you can also try that out and see. What you just simply need to do is give it a flex. And I was talking about, let me now also define a width for each of these elements. Let me start each of these elements so I can mention to you about the flex wrap, about it breaking the other lines that I mentioned previously. So I'm just going to do this dot container. I'll just send div. So I'm going to do this. So it's going to be BG background color of white, and we also have margin of, no, I don't need the margin. Just going to give it a padding in between, padding of 5 rem. I'm also going to give, that's all I'm going to give it, and let's see. So let's give it a text color of black. Let's give this a color of black so we can see our text right inside. Okay, let me comment this out. So sometimes there is something called will I say, there is something called hierarchy in CSS. So I'm also going to touch about that later on. So you should know that if you are defining a style first, then the next style is going to be overridden by that style. So as you can see right here, I defined a color for our all our text on our web page will be white. But at this point in time, I want to define this particular element. I want to make it black. You can see it only affects everything in that div. So that thing is still white. So that's what we call hierarchy. So I'm going to make mention of it. I'm going to discuss extensively about it in other topics. Yeah. So let's also, I mentioned of trying to do something called flex wrap. So let's add more elements to this. Let's add more elements to this. Let's add more elements to this. Let's add more elements to this, and you will see what would happen. So you can see I added more elements to this, and it spanned. You can see I added more elements to this, and it spanned across, causing me to have an overflow. And this will happen a lot of time. What if we are working with a database and this data is just being populated? So what you simply just have to do is you come right here and you do something called flex wrap. Say wrap. And with this, once you get to the end of the screen and it sees that there are no more space, what it simply does is it automatically breaks through the next line and makes it equal. So you have equal elements, equal numbers of lines. And as you can see, once it goes to this, we didn't have to start styling it. Okay, let it fit to a particular screen and all. So do we understand? Do we understand the mechanism behind flex of wrap? Do you understand it? Should I explain again? I need response, guys. Let's communicate. Can someone raise up their hand and tell me, okay, George, you want me to recap a bit? So I said that I made mention of something saying that you could, yeah, as a front-end developer, you would be working with elements from a database. And with elements from a database, you would have what's the name? You would have more elements than the moment you are styling it. Like the moment you are building your web app or website and it's connected to the database, if it's not a static website, you would have more data that are going to be produced on your screen. And at the time of you developing your website or web app, you would have like probably 5 to 10 elements. And at that point of having 5 to 10 elements, you might just design for 10 elements. So let's say the first time we were working with our browser, we just had, let me Control Z. Let me just do a Control Z so that, let me do a Control Z right here. So at the time we were building this our website, for example, we just had 4 elements and we were building for the 4 elements, not minding, okay, not knowing that there will be a growth in our website. So later on, they just connected it to a database and our elements started growing from 4 to numbers we don't know. And with this, we never made provision for that. We never made provision of FlexWrap. What it simply does is it would keep floating side by side. It will keep going side by side and causing us to have an overflow on our website. And once you have something on your website called an overflow, it simply means your website is not responsive. Once there is an horizontal scroll on your website right here, it means your website is not responsive. So you simply have to work. You simply have to work on that. So what the quick fix for this is, you just had, if you are using Flexbox, you just have this position, and you just have this element, this style, which is called FlexWrap. And with FlexWrap, it automatically wraps our element and give us an equal spacing of our elements across board, making it easier, even if our element now grows more than what you could expect, it keeps giving us the same style. So let's go back to our HTML here and add more content to it. Let's just keep adding more content. Let's just keep adding more content, and let's just keep adding more content. And let's save this. And you would see that we don't need to start thinking about, oh, how is it going to look like? It automatically styles it for us right there. So George, you are asking a question. Sir, put the flex wrap under the div side. That is not going to work. It's not going to work on this div element because we are targeting the parent container. One thing you have to know is some of the styles you'll be using when you're working with Flexbox, you have to target the parent container of that element. You have to target the parent container of that element. So for what we are working with, which is the flex wrap, we are targeting the parent container, which is holding all the elements together. You can see that this container is the one holding these elements together. It's one holding these elements together. All the elements inside it is one holding it together. So we just target that to flex wrap it. If you are doing a flex wrap on this div, it does not have more than one item inside it. So there is no need to use a flex wrap on it. So I would come up before the next class. I'll come up with a table of showing which elements can you use on when you're using a flex, when you're working with flex code, which flex elements can you use on a container and which flex elements can you use on a particular item, so you don't just start using them randomly and not getting an actual result. There are some elements you have to use on the parent container, and there are some elements you have to use on the item itself. So guys, I'm going to drop a chart for you so that you guys just have at the back of your mind once anything happens. So I'm dropping a chart for you guys in the chat box now. So you guys just check what I have there. So I dropped the chart for you guys in the chat box. So just check it and have that at the back of your mind. So at any point in time, I could call it a day. So please just bear with me. So I have two hands that are raised. John Paul Abraham, you can go ahead and speak.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir. Can you go back to your browser, sir? Let me show you.
Okay, this is my browser.
Okay, down, sir, to the last div, the last element of div. Okay, sir. These two elements, div, is there any way that they can be aligned to the left, or is it the reason why we have grid?
Gray, as in how?
Grid. I mean, aligning these two last div to the left.
So this is simply working with FlexWrap actually. So
okay,
what FlexWrap is actually doing is checking to give this element to make it on an equal line. So if once it gets to the end of the screen, it sees that, oh, there is no more space for this element, it automatically breaks it to the next line. If it gets to the end of that particular element also and sees that there's no space, it breaks it to the next line again. So it just makes all the elements fit on the screen. So you now want to make this element so that instead of them being at the center, they spread out to the left and right in itself, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Well, that I don't know if that can be possible because this is Flex, but I'm sure that if we try to tweak it more, if we try tweaking it more, we could get it, but let's justify left. Let's see justify left, and let's be sure someone just dropped that justify left. Let's try justify left and see. Oh yeah, justify left should work. Let's see. Let's see if someone dropped that, and let's see left, left, justify left. So you can see it actually moved audio element to the left, making it start from the left. Joshua, it actually moved audio element to the left, and that's not actually what you want to achieve. It's supposed to pick the two last elements at the bottom and move it to the left. And yes, there is something we can actually do. Yes, Kelvin, that was actually what came to my mind. The nth child. So once you have an element like this, you use something called the nth child. And with that nth child, it makes you target the last element of what you have, of your div. It makes you target the last element of your div and pushes it to the end. So thank you very much for bringing up that, Kelvin. But we also have that in a separate lecture, actually. We also have that in a separate lecture, and I don't want us to start going into some of those lectures. I just wanted to know that, like I made mention of in previous classes, I would make reference to some things which you will need in the future, and we will get back to it later on at that point. So, George, your hand was raised, but your hand is now dropped. I don't know. George, do you still have a question? So I can just allow us go into the practical session we have for today. So, oh yeah, George, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, my question was about if we use overflow to stop the overflow.
Okay, so that's like a quick fix. So if you use something called overflow hidden, George, it's not going to it's not going to break it to the next line. So let's try that out. So you will see it for yourself. It's not going to flow to the left. So let's do, instead of flex wrap, let's do overflow hidden. Overflow hidden. So let's see and see what we have. So with overflow hidden, it's just going to hide the overflow, but it's not going to break the element, so that you can see that we still have more elements hidden to the left and to the right hand side. So we won't be able to see those elements on the left and on the right. Basically, that's why overflow hidden won't work for this thing. So I hope you understand now, George. George, do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So who's is that your mic that is still unmuted, George? All right. So now I think we have done the basics of Flexbox, and let's go into our practical session so we can actually finish building up this. And I must tell you, so now we have the Flex wrap. We don't have Flex wrap here, and we are using a Flex. And you can see this is actually side by side, and we want to change the orientation back to column. So we just have Flex direction, and we give it column. So instead of it being on an horizontal axis, it comes back to the vertical axis. So it gives us this. So even when you're using Flexbox, I use Flexbox a lot when I'm working with our elements, when I'm building. If I want to justify something to the center, and I know it's that they're not going to be side by side, I just use a flex. And by the time me using a flex for that, I display it to the left, I move it side by side, and I change the orientation back to the center. And I change the orientation using flex direction. And also, I don't know if you guys have come about this, you would hear something like, oh, there are so many, how do you center a div? That if you're active on dev Twitter space on Twitter or X, you would see something saying that, oh, you can style a div, that you can spend 2 hours styling a div. Yes. So if you're a beginner, you start trying to use margin, left to the right, top and bottom, something like that, just to get it to the center. So this is one of the quick fix. Or if they ask you on an internship to be like, okay, how do you center a div? Just use display flex, justify content center, align item center, and that brings your elements to the center. So that is one of the fastest way to center a div. If you don't remember anything from this class, just take that. One of the fastest way of centering a div is display flex on the parent container, justify content center. That's what you have. So, do we understand? Am I making sense, guys? Do you want me to go over anything, or we could go into our practical session to see how we can come up with our design using Flex? Should we do that? And there's also something called, there's also another element. I think, no, before I go into that practical design, I think I should just let me just explain some of the other terms in Flexbox, because there's two more. There is something called column reverse. So I can reverse it from the down part to come back up. So I just have column reverse. So this brings the last element to the top. This brings the last element to the top and takes the first element to the bottom. So let's continue. I'm trying to check my notes. I'm trying to check my notes to see if I'm missing anything else. Okay, there's something called, there's nothing, this is actually the basic stuff you need for Flexbox. And before we go into, and I don't want, due to the message I dropped, so is it possible to add a flex between the background and the div elements? Star Prince, I'm trying to understand your question. Star Prince, I'm trying to understand your question. Star Prince, if you can unmute and ask your question. Star Prince, are you there? You can raise up your hand so I can give you the mic, so I can unmute your mic. So there is also something called Flex Grow. So we can actually grow. Okay, I mean outside of our background. I mean, can we have background on one side? Yes, you can actually have the background on one side, but one basic question I'm going to ask you is, why do you want to display You could, for the background color right here now, you can see we have our background color on the body. So, and every element we have right inside here is inside the body. So if we do flex on the background color, on the body element rather, you need to bring this each one to the side, and also the container div is going to split both of them into two. So let's do that. So let's do a flex. Let's do a display flex rather. Display flex, and let's save that. So you would see that it's actually going to bring, you can see we have three different divs in this element now. We have our Flexbox class, we have this text at the bottom. So let's check our HTML. So you can see we have the each one text, and we have this attribute of div. So we have three divs right here, three elements inside our body. And with that, we displaying it flex, we can just do justify content space between, and we do align item center, So that brings all our elements straightforward. And you can see once I did align item center, it brought this flex box to the center. So everything are going to be aligned properly to the center. So do you understand now, Star Prince? So we just use justify content space between, and yeah, that's what we have. Olakunle, please, can everyone hear me? Oh, Olakunle, I think it's from your end. You probably just have to drop off and join back again, and you'll be good. So yeah, check your network. So let's start with our practical session for today, and let's see how far we can go. So anywhere we get to, we just continue from there in the next class. Because I'm not sure my device will be able to last. What do you guys think? Should I just keep on talking about Flexbox? Because I just sent you guys a message now. So I don't know if we are going to start. I don't know if we'll be able to scale through get to in the practical session. We just stop right now. So can you all hear me? Hello? Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So let's just start with the practical. Anywhere we get to, we will just stop there. So let me clear this up. Let me clear our HTML up also. So anywhere we get stopped, we'll just pick it up from there. And I don't think we'll spend so much time on our HTML. So let's see. So let's start with our HTML. So the first thing we would have right here is I'm going to have, let me just start with this, and we'll have a main. Let's have our main. So I'm just going to do it like the previous class. I'm going to give this a class name, a class of product. I'm going to go into the main. I'm going to give this also an article. I'm going to have an article. So article. I'm going to have a class. I'm going to have a class of container. This should be container, not product. Container. This should be product. It should be product. This, so we have a div. So we have our image, class of product image. We also have our image. So we have our image right here, which is a self-closing tag. We have src. We have /. We have // image / yep. So this is what we have. And I'm also going to give this a class name. I'm also going to give this a class. I'm going to give it an alt text of product image. I'm also going to give this, it's going to give it a class of product image of underscore image dash element. So let's see what we have. So this is simply what we have. Let's continue. So let's continue. So please, as I'm doing this, if you have any question, you can always ask me. So you can ask. So I'm also going to respond for this class for freedom of topics I've talked about. So it's not that I'm just speaking. So despite me answering your question, I can still continue writing my code alongside. So does anyone have any question? So let me just finish writing up our HTML and I'll start taking questions. Let me finish writing up our HTML and I'll start taking questions from there. So the next thing we have is outside our product div item. So we have a div. So here is another shortcut of writing a class and a div. So you just do something called, so we have a product dash content. So with this, if you do a dot and your class name, is simply going to give us simply what? It's simply going to give us a div with a class. It's simply going to give us a div with a class. So simply going to give us a div with a class. And that is simply another shortcut that we can do. So let's continue. So this is so I'm going to do this inside. Let me just have a P. So if you have this P dot product underscore category. So you having dots and a dot and a class and just any name is automatically going to give you a div. So we have dot dancing. Just give me a div class of dancing. So if you put any element name, if you put any element name, you have a P and you put dot HHH, it's going to give you a class. So that's just like quick fix of writing a class name before you writing a div. Before you write the div, you now write the class. It saves you some precious few seconds. So let me just copy our text. Let me copy this text right here and save this in front here. Let's just put this right here. So let's go to the next one. The next one is going to be h1 dot product name underscore name. So it gives me the product name. So I'm simply going to go right here and copy the product name. So this is actually a French perfume. So you can go to the market and check it out. So the next thing we'll have is product description, which is also going to be a P tag. So I have a p tag, and which is, sorry, let me not do this. So I have I have p dot product underscore description. So that's what we have. And I go right here. And I just copy the product description, Control C, Control X rather. And yeah, I paste this right here. So we now have so let's check what we have. So this is simply what we have, and let's check against our design to be sure that, yeah, we are, well, we don't simply necessarily have to do this yet because we are just working on one end. So let's continue. We have not started styling our CSS yet, so we should just continue. So the next thing we would have is, we'll have a section dot product pricing underscore pricing. So this gives me product pricing. I'm just going to have a p dot product price, product underscore price. And as you can see also, I'm having like same structure of defining my class name. So I'm not just randomly, I'm using one structure basically for my class name. So I don't have to start thinking of, this is also another good way of coding practice, basically. Having a straight line, having a simple way of doing something, like defining your class name in a defined way. So you don't have to start having distorted class name rendering. So I have product underscore strike price. So the next thing is this other price, and we have a button. And the last thing we have right here is a button. So let's save this, and let's now check out our button. So we have a button. So we have button. So now I'm now going to give this. So let me make this readable. So let me this. So that your code are readable. This is what this is for. Basically, nothing special about it, but for readability's sake. So yeah, let's do this. And the next thing I have right here is going to be a button. It's going to have button dot product button underscore button. So and now I'm going to have an image, which is, I could use this as an icon, but in the next class, the reason why I'm giving each element a particular class, because I'm going to style them separately. So each element has a different style on its own. As you can see, each of those elements, the perfume up here has a different class on its own. The perfume name has, so each one of them has a different class on their own. That is simply why I'm giving each one of them a defined class. That's simply it. So the next thing I'm just going to do, I'm just going to add an image, and I'm going to have dot slash src dot slash images slash icon of cat. So I want you to know that this is not an optimized way of doing something, of adding, you want to add something like a product card. Most times you can just use an icon, and we are going to get to that in the next. I'm going to show you how to do that in the next class. So I think we should just round up with this, and we have our alt text, and it's going to be cut image. So there's also going to be a part for you guys at the end of this class. So you should just play along with it. Basically, it's nothing serious. So I'm going to have add to cart. And yes, we are done. Yes, we are done with our HTML structure. So this is simply what we have. So let's start with our CSS. So the first thing we also know how to do is we create our global reset, padding, 0, box sizing, border box. So, and let's save and see. Let's save and see. So you can see we have this already. So we would also be having let's go and pick our font family. So we just go to font, Google font, and one of the font, let's see our style guide. Let's see our style guide. Let's see our style guide. What font are we using? We are using Mozart. Our font is Mozart. So let's go right here and search for Mozart. Mozart. No, I'm not getting the spelling correctly. Okay, there's a T there. Okay, this is it. So I think let's get the font. So I'm not using Lato, so I just delete this and just get embedded code. So this is something you're all familiar with. I don't need to explain this over again. So I copy this and I import it right at the top of my CSS. So this should go. And the next thing we would have is, let me just define body. So let's define our body. So we have body, we have font family, which is Montserrat, and sans serif. So we also have like a background color. Let's go to our style guide right here and just copy our cream. So we have this cream background color. Control C, and let's paste this right here. And yep, we have mean height. A mean height of 100 VH. So this is like VH. This is also a measurement in CSS. We also have, so let's save and see what we have. Where are you? So you can see we have our cream color, and yeah, we are getting there. So let's now style our container. Container. You have a margin of 2 rem, and like I explained in the previous class, it's just like margin top and bottom 2 rem, margin left and right. So we also have this. We have a max width of 600 pixels. So let's save and see what we have. Let's now go back to our product. Product. We have a display flex, display of flex. Let's save and see what we have. Have a display of flex. Why is this when we have product? We have product content right inside. Oh, Can you see? I made a mistake with our product. Yeah, I saw the error. So product is not correct. So let's just copy this and paste it right here. So thank you very much, Alan, for following along. So this, let's change this to product. So let's save and see what we have. So as you can see, they are now side by side. So let's continue. And I think, yes, let's basically stop here and continue in the next class because I don't want to go deep and we'll get lost in between. So from the next class, we'll continue styling from where we stopped and we're going to finish this up actually. So please, do we have any question before we call it a day? Do we have any question, guys? I'm so sorry this is basically happening. I'm so sorry. So do we have any question? Do we have any question before we call it a day? Do we have any question before we call it a day, guys? Okay, Kelvin, go ahead and ask your question. And please make it snappy.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Good morning, sir.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to disrupt anything the program has implemented, but I feel it would be a little bit like more safer for students to actually identify maybe where they can improve on or where they had lapses. Afterwards, the result is out. So I don't know if maybe an extra column can be created on the what is it called, on the
On the
tax.
LMS.
Yes, on the elements on the tax platform, whereby the grader would actually pass a remark or a comment on, okay, you can do this, because we don't know what your activities are like. So instead of coming and bombarding the group with where can I improve, where can I improve, and there are multiple hands asking that question on the group. So that's just what I want to chip in. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So as regards that, CodeCamp basically, you don't have to book a session. Basically, sometimes what we do sometimes is we do a bulk review of stacks. So as we are in class like this, after we have finished what we are doing, after we have finished the topic we are teaching for that day, we just go into the submission. And as many as anybody that is on the call that want to have a review of their tasks, what we simply do is I open their submission. I've been teaching in CodeCamp for the past 4 years. So what we basically do is we just open up each and everybody's tasks. If you want your tasks to be open, so we can review it. Though those sessions are not recorded, they are just for those on the call. So that's what we simply do. We do like a bulk review of tasks. So Kelvin, do you understand? Thank you very much, guys, for today's class.
Thank you, sir.